What is the good word, everybody? I'm Noah from Techno Buffalo. This is the Apple iPhone 4. This is the HTC Thunderbolt. Both phones are available on Verizon, although this is the AT&T version of the iPhone 4. The Thunderbolt is the biggest, baddest new kid on the block. It's got LTE, it's got an 8 megapixel camera on the back, a 1.3 megapixel camera on the front, it's got Android, it's got HTC Sense, it's got a kickstand. The iPhone 4, still perhaps the most popular smartphone in America, maybe in the world if you're looking at individual model sales, not the whole platform. Either way, it's still the one people want to know. Well, this new thing, the Thunderbolt, is it better than the iPhone? Let's find out. I'm gonna get you! Alright, so on the left, it's the Thunderbolt. The HTC Thunderbolt for Verizon, Verizon's first LTE smartphone. On the right, the iPhone 4. Like I said, this is the AT&T version, not the Verizon version. Not a whole lot of difference for the purposes of this video. Thunderbolt, just announced. It'll be available, well, it is available now, March 17th, sorry. It is $249.99 on contract after rebate, although already some online deals a little cheaper than that. iPhone 4 has been out for a while now for both AT&T and Verizon, and $199 or $299 after contract, depending on how much memory you want in the device. And so speaking of that, right off the bat, we'll say that the Thunderbolt has 8 gigs of internal storage built in. It comes with a 32 gigabyte micro SD card pre-installed, so essentially you've got 40 gigs of internal storage. Micro SD cards generally not quite as fast as internal flash storage, but still you've got 40 gigs of storage space, or a little bit less formatted. iPhone 4, 16 or 32 gigs. So if you get the 32 gig iPhone model for $299, it's $50 more retail than the Thunderbolt, and you have a little bit less storage, 32 gigs as opposed to a total of 40 on the Thunderbolt, if you want to look at such things. Also, we'll talk about the physical design. Obviously, the Thunderbolt, a big phone, larger, very clearly than the iPhone. So Thunderbolt, you've got a 4.3-inch WVGA display. It's a Super LCD technology, Super LCD, capacitive multi-touch, and you're looking at 480 by 800 pixels, so 217 dots per inch. iPhone 4, you're looking at a 3.5-inch display, 640 by 960, the so-called Retina display at 330 pixels per inch. So the iPhone is a smaller but higher resolution display. Thunderbolt is a larger but lower resolution display. So there you go. The devices themselves, obviously, a big physical difference. Thunderbolt it's larger all the way around. It's chunkier, or thicker, whatever you want to say, and it weighs roughly 20% more than iPhone 4 does. And you definitely feel it. There's a very different feel to the two devices holding them here. Again, you get a larger display, and so if you want, more physical room, a little bit easier to type on, that kind of thing, you get that on Thunderbolt. iPhone, I'm not personally a huge fan of the iPhone 4 design. That's all subjective. I like the old iPhone design better myself. But, a couple things right off the bat. You've got the Android design here with the 4 capacitive touch buttons on the bottom of the Thunderbolt. iPhone's got the single home button. More bezel, particularly at the top and the bottom on the iPhone 4 than the Thunderbolt. The front of the Thunderbolt, you've got some bezel, especially down there on the bottom, but mostly it's taken up by the screen. When you turn the devices over, the iPhone has more of a squared-off design. Thunderbolt, very rounded onto the back. The back feels curvier because you've got these edges, this big bulge in the middle. The edges really taper off. The iPhone, very flat across the back with the iPhone 4 design. Overall, the iPhone is more pocketable, both in terms of footprint and thickness, and it weighs less. But, both devices solidly built. I kind of like the curved edges of the Thunderbolt, a little bit easier to hold in the hand. I like the way they feel better than the more kind of sharp edges of the iPhone 4, but not a big deal. I don't think many people are really going to, care about that kind of stuff. It's really just the overall size of the device. Both devices have a front-facing camera. The edge goes to the Thunderbolt in terms of just raw megapixels, 1.3 megapixels versus the VGA sensor on iPhone 4. And then on the back, you've got an 8 megapixel camera with dual LED flash, 720p HD video capture on Thunderbolt. iPhone 4 has a 5 megapixel camera with a single LED flash and also 720p video capture. I think the camera is fairly even. The iPhone 4 I found takes slightly better videos. Still image quality, you have more megapixels on the Thunderbolt, but actual image quality is kind of a push to me. I'm going to go, overall I think the iPhone has a little bit of an edge because the video capture is better, but if you just want raw megapixels, certainly the Thunderbolt has the edge. Both devices have 3.5mm headphone jack and lock switches on top. Nice to see that they put the Thunderbolt's lock switch over on the right side where it's easier to use. I think iPhone's is there as well. On the right spine of the phone, Thunderbolt has the rocker switch on the right side. iPhone has nothing. You've got that SIM card slot there, but that's about it. On the bottom, both devices have a microphone. The iPhone, of course, has the Apple iPod connector. And then on the other spine, you've got USB, micro USB port on the Thunderbolt. iPhone has its volume up-down buttons as well as the mute, the silent switch over on the left spine. So a little bit different there. Thunderbolt has the volume controls on the right spine, iPhone on the left spine. Thunderbolt, neither phone has an HDMI out port, which, no surprise for iPhone, now Apple's got that adapter you can use, an optional adapter to hook it up to a monitor of the iPhone and all the iOS devices. Interesting though, the Thunderbolt does not have HDMI out, since the other HTC device has been coming out lately, and even back to the Evo 4G have the mini HDMI rather. So that's a little bit disappointing. Maybe a deal breaker for some people, because the HDMI out on some of these new devices is kind of handy if you're hooking this up to a big screen monitor or what have you. And then of course the Thunderbolt has the kickstand, which iPhone does not, and it's nice. It's solid. It's got a nice snap to it. It stays in place, and you can prop your device up for viewing. iPad you can prop up. Well, no, you can't. So there you go. iPad. I just call it iPad. iPhone. When you get into the using the devices themselves, pardon the pun, but it really is apples and oranges here. It's Android 2.2. It's iOS version 4 right now, and HTC Sense on the